But the rest, he wrote himself. I wrote him 3 songs. My sister wrote, famously, Len Miro and Chochve. She wrote those melodies for the vocals to those lyrics. I even said, believe it or not, my mom wrote one song. And when I said this, everyone was like, what's the song? What's the song? I was like, oh my God, okay. Zona.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Assyrian podcast. My name is Rhoda, and this is episode 221. Thanks so much for joining us. Whether you're a longtime listener or tuning in for the first time, we're grateful you're here. Today's conversation is a very special one. 2 summers ago, the Assyrian community lost one of its most beloved voices, Evin Agassi. His music transcended generations and borders, becoming part of the soundtrack of the Assyrian life for so many of us. His songs filled our homes, our weddings, our celebrations, and even our quiet moments, helping preserve our language, culture, and identity for Assyrians around the world. For today's episode, I got to talk to his son, Bryner. Bryner is an accomplished musician in his own right, and in recent years, he has also dedicated himself to preserving his father's musical legacy by remastering and restoring Evin's recordings so they can continue to be enjoyed for generations to come. In this episode, we talked about what it was like growing up with one of the most recognizable voices in Assyrian music, Bryner's own journey as a musician, the responsibility and emotion behind preserving his father's catalog, and the legacy Evin leaves behind. This episode of the Assyrian podcast is brought to you by Get Set Tech, a Google for Education partner helping schools get the most out of Google Workspace and Chrome. From security audits to Chromebooks, Gemini, and Google Voice licenses, their team is here to support you get set with Google. You can email them at google@getsettech.com or visit getsettech.com to learn more. And now, without further ado, here's Bryner Agassi. Bryner, welcome to the Assyrian podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here with you.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I have obviously so many questions about your dad and what growing up in the household must have been like for you. But
Sure.
I also know you're a musician in your own right. And so I want to start there. Can you talk about a little bit about your journey to music? And do you remember the first time you realized you actually liked music in your own terms, if you will?
Absolutely. Listen, there's not a day that goes by that I actually don't think about that memory and those memories, to be honest with you. I remember the very first time I ever got, as they say, hit with the musical bug. It was, oh my God, it was watching my dad in our house when I was probably about, 3-4 years old. He would sit behind his keyboard on the dinner table and he would just come up with melodies. And I found it so fascinating and the music just drew me in. And I was like, wow. And slowly, as he would go up on stage, I would walk up right with him. There's so many photos, and I've even heard through the grapevine that people have video from back in the 80s of me on stage with them. So yeah, so I would walk up on stage, and I got to tell you, because he would always get a kick out of it, because I would say, I want to wear what Eva is wearing. And yes, I never called him dad because he didn't want me to ever call him dad. So It was Evin. And I would always say, okay, I want to wear what he's wearing. I want to go on stage with him when he's going on. I was just glued to him, and I could tell you so many funny stories of different things, but that's essentially when it really hit me, because I would go on stage and I would feel the music. And just to kind of elaborate on that is when I would walk up on stage with him, I would hold a microphone. Obviously, that was not plugged in, but yeah, and I would pretend to sing. But Rhoda, let me tell you something. I would always have my because when you're on stage, your back is like towards the drummer, but I would always turn around and look at him. And I fell in love with the drums. Like that's when it really, really hit me. And I was 4 years old. And I fell in love with it. I mean, I would literally just look at these pieces of this instrument. They're shiny, they're beautiful, they all make a different sound when you hit them, and you're using sticks to bang on them. And it just happened from there. I told my dad, and he saw that, okay, just a typical little drummer going around the house banging on everything with pots and pans and wooden sticks. And that's how it happened. I just started playing, and I got my first drum set when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and that's it. I mean, it grew from there.
I'm thinking of my nephew who's 4, and I feel like nothing could be more fun to a little boy than just banging on pots and pans and drumming. I don't know how my sister would feel about it, but
There really isn't. Have you ever tried to play drums? If you haven't, try it.
no.
They're fun. I'm telling you,
I'm
it's fun.
sure it looks fun. It also, it's like, I feel like it's one of those instruments that looks deceivingly easy, and
Right.
there's probably a lot more to it, obviously. Just keeping the time, and like you're also doing different things with your two hands and your feet.
Right.
And so
Yes.
coordinating that, like that is, it looks easy and it looks really fun, but I know that there is more to it than just that. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about,
Mhm.
growing up and just seeing your dad at home playing his keyboard, and that's what you sort of drew you into the music. What was
Right.
your house like in general in terms of just music? Was there always music playing? Was your dad always singing? What was that like?
Look, to be honest with you, my household growing up, there was always music. But you know what my dad would do is every time he would see his kids watching TV, he just put his headphones on. And all you would hear, I swear, oh my God, this takes me back to memories. All you would hear is this man's fingernails and fingers hitting the keyboard.
Mhm.
And all you would hear from the background is like, tap, 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 tap. It's like almost like some sort of like SOS code being sent, you know? But there was a lot of music, and it wasn't just Assyrian music. I mean, my dad loved music to the greatest extent. So it was all types of music, and the music he grew up to, and the music that was, more modern then. So he was just constantly, enthralled in music and listening and just trying to continuously create his own sound in his own genre, I guess you could say, because that's essentially, in my opinion, is that's what really makes an artist stand out is you have to have your own lane. You carve your own path and you just stick to it, and it just grows from there. So it was musical. The household had a lot of music going on, but at the same time, it was a typical house, Assyrian house, mom's making food and the kids are watching TV, and yeah, music in the background. And then, he would come out and just hang out with us. And he was really family oriented. So I would say every chance he got to hang out with us and spend time with us, he would. Then, as a typical musician, when everyone's asleep, that's when he's starting to really get into the weeds with music. So,
What you talked about, what the kinds of music he listened to, and like he was just a lover of music in general. And I think it's evident in his discography. You listen to his songs and there are like influences, if you will. Like there are some songs that are more like Spanish influenced, with like
Sure,
Spanish guitar,
sure,
and there are others that are very much Assyrian folk. And then I also hear a lot of like Persian influences, and
right?
things like that. So what are some of the things he listened to, and what do you think were his biggest influences, and artists that he, not that he would try to emulate them, but like artists that
Uh-huh.
influenced him and inspired him?
He would listen to everything from like opera to I mean, he loved Spanish. He loved Spanish. He really
Hmm.
did. He loved European style music. And I will say this, he listened to a lot of Arabic. He listened to a lot of
Mm.
Turkish. He listened to a lot of Persian music. And of course, he was born and raised
Hmm.
and grew up in Iran. So, it
Hmm.
was, it's just part of the culture that you're in. Just like, we listen
Hmm.
to American music and, we're given the opportunity to listen to all sorts of music,
Of
but
course.
it's kind of like the culture that you're raised in at the time that you're listening to that music. But he would listen to like Mario Lanza, Perry Como,
Yeah.
Pavarotti. Of course, goes without saying, I think anyone who's ever known Evin from a close proximity, he really loved Vigen. Vigen was an Armenian Persian singer who really changed the focal point of music in Iran. Before Vegan came, the music wasn't as modern, wasn't as pop. Vegan came and he really just changed it all. And Evin was a little boy when Vegan first started. And, of course, they grew a friendship and, the rest is history from there. But Vegan always had a very significant influence, one of the influences on Evin that he drew from Vegan. And, yeah, there's, when he, the last time he met Vigen, or I remember, my dad telling me the story that Vigen told him. He said, if you came before me, you would have done what I did. And, even to my dad at that point, where he's a grown man at this
Mm.
point, and this is right before, his passing of Vigen, they grew a very strong friendship and strong bond. And it meant a lot to my dad. And so, any opportunity that he had to pay his respect to Vigen, he would do it at, certain events of his. But yeah, my dad just loved music. And honestly, I think through that music, he just created his own style. And he also respected the fact that not every song should and will sound like the other. Because, say, and this is why his music sounds so different, because it's like one song will have that Spanish influence while the other one may have a little bit more of a, ethnic twist to it. And he would also, because he was a musician himself, he played guitar, he played keyboard, he understood the language of, the musicians and what he wanted to happen in his songs and what he wanted recorded and the feel. So I think that all kind of catered to the sound that he created for himself, and that all came from being introduced to music at a young age, but also the wide array of different genres that he would listen to.
Yeah, that's so clear when you listen to his music from the start to his last album. What I
Hmm.
appreciate is that he was never afraid to try different things. And I think sometimes artists of that caliber, when they know something is working, it's like, why do something else? Right? They can continue to do the same thing, and people would be
Yeah,
such huge fans because they are legends and in their own right. But I one of
sure.
the albums that I've been listening to more recently is one of the more recent ones. That album has so many songs that are just so different than some of his earlier music.
Yeah,
And I love that opportunity that he had to sort of explore all these different genres and not just stick to one lane, because
You're right.
it gives us breadth and depth, right?
Sure.
As
Yeah.
opposed to just doing the same thing over and over again, because that's an easy formula to follow.
Qasr was an album that we had a lot of discussion on. All I can say is I'm so glad this was his last album, that it sounded and he did what he wanted to do. Because in the studio, a lot of times, it doesn't matter how much you love the person. And my dad always knew that when we come to talk about music, we got to put all biases away. I was never, oh my God, that sounds great, Dad. No, it was like, nope, it's not good. I don't like, no, don't do this. And he would also dish it back to me. So we were very open, because that's the only way that you can really formulate your interpretation of what you're feeling at that moment, Qasr was an album that, both me and my uncle, we were like telling my dad, we said, Evin, no, let's do this style album. These are good songs, but just keep them on the side. Just do this album. We had a whole, like, my uncle had lyrics set up for him. I was actually producing the album, the entire album. And my dad was like, no, I want these songs. So we were like, okay. I mean, hey, listen, at the end of the day, it's your music, So if you want it, yeah, it's like, let's go. Okay, so let's do it. So 2 of the songs on Qasr I played drums to, which was In Shoqat and Qasr, both of them slow songs. I remember as we were recording it and as we kept listening back, I fell in love with the album. And my dad told me, he said, you know what? This is the way I've always looked at all my albums. If just one person out of the community, just one person says, I like this one song, I feel like I have created a successful album. Everyone has a different taste. Everyone has a different notion on, what's good. And again, it's all subjective. Music, art is all subjective. So when the album was done, I sat there and I said, wow. I said, do you realize what kind of album this became and has become right now? And he said, no, tell me what you're thinking. I said, you are literally going back to the Shamiran album. Because with the Shamiran album, you gave everyone such a different taste of like going from like, pop and Spanish and, obviously the Assyrian rhythms. But I said, you're giving so much here. And the lyrics remind me of that like heart-wrenching love and admiration you're giving to your lover, just like you originally did. And it was such a full circle. And I said, wow, this is literally, I told him, I said, Evin, this is literally one of the best albums that I've ever heard. So when that album came out, he was very happy with it. I was very happy with it. My uncle was very happy with it. And to know that was the last one, kind of just, I smile now. And I'm like, that's amazing. Because he did the album he wanted, and the music, to me, it's so forward. It's going to be timeless. And I think in about 20, 30 years, people are going to listen to that and they're going to be like, wow, it's still good, man. Like, this is aging very well. So very proud of that album. I just had to tell you that story because, yeah, I felt you would at least appreciate those little tidbits, from behind the scenes.
Totally. I really love that album. And my husband has a theory that Bitanina is the sequel to Len Miro.
No, he's right. Yeah, I'm telling you, he went full circle. I remember like the conversations with him and my uncle very vividly because, listen, when it comes down to lyrics, they're not easy. When you're formulating lyrics, they are not easy. So I remember he would tell him like, no, I got to get something very simple, but makes meaning and has meaning, just like Len Miro. So they came up with Betanina, and it was kind of like okay, this is the sequel.
Speaking of your uncle, he played a major role in your dad's career as a songwriter. Did they work together on writing the songs, or would your uncle usually just write a song and give it to him, or did they collaborate? What was that relationship like?
It was all of it. My dad didn't just write music because it sounded good. He literally sat there saying, okay, for example, the one song that comes to mind is Hayarta, Hayurun Hayarta, from like the early 90s. And so he wanted to write a song that was about helping our people back home. I mean, these people are struggling. We need to help them here in America. We need to send them doctors. We need to send them medication. We need to send them help. Who's going to help them? The government's not helping. We need to help them. So he wrote the music that would evoke the emotion from the listener of this is what I'm singing. So my dad took his ability to evoke emotion with his vocal melodies and the sound that he was looking for. That would go hand in hand with the subject that he wanted. That's where my uncle would come in and say, okay, this is the subject, this is the thought, okay, let's write. And when he would write the story, because my uncle will always say, I do not write lyrics, I write stories. I write poems, and then we would break them up with your dad to make them flow like a lyric. I guess that's kind of the secret to the sauce that they had together, So my dad would really come up with the sound and the subject and the thought, and my uncle would come back and say, okay, here, let me place your thought. Let me listen to the music. Okay, this is what it's bringing up in me. See if it matches with what you're thinking. And they would agree. And the hardest part wasn't that, because my uncle could just write lyrics for days. I mean, he could sit there and write you a story like you can come up with anything. To take that and break it up into the song and make it flow correctly, that was something that they really worked on together. My dad would never, interfere with the thought process for the lyrics, because as he would always state, Givergis is my teacher. I listen to him. And, it's beautiful because in the reverse, my uncle would always say, no, Evan's my teacher. I thought you were going to ask if my dad ever wrote his own lyrics, which that's going to be really easy to answer. So let me start with that. My dad actually did write certain lyrics to songs. One of them was Libeshidana from the Shamiram album. My dad actually wrote the lyrics, which is a beautiful lyrics, and it's a beautiful song. And I always told him, I said, you don't want, he's like, no. I'm not a lyricist. I can't do it. I just did it that one time out of sheer luck. Like, that's it.
Bryner, I appreciate all of the things you've shared, like the tidbits. I want to know a little bit about your dad outside of his music and just your family and growing up. Can you tell us a little bit about how your parents met and how they ended up sort of moving to the United States?
It's crazy. They knew each other since they were kids. Like, they grew up in the same neighborhood. They played with one another. Like, they were just a couple years apart, and they kind of grew up and, throughout school and later on in life, they're kind of like, okay, I like you. Well, I like you too. Let's date. And then all of a sudden they get married. I mean, they have always, their whole life, they have known one another. And, my dad never talked much about, how, any of the, experiences dating wise, with my mom. But, he always used to tell us no, we grew up literally in the same neighborhood, and our parents knew one another. And, as we got older, we really liked one another. And, obviously they were kind of secretly dating on the side, and they told their parents and they got married. And, back then people got married really young. they got married, I think I want to say about like 19, 20.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad had already been singing and started a career for himself. And I think right when he got married, that was the time that at like 20 years old, or 21, I will say, that's when they had my sister Bianca.
Mm.
And that's when it was like music was completely a full-time job for him. And, what happened was they were still living in Iran. This is back in
Mm-hmm.
1970. Still living in Iran. And my dad was traveling out to, California, to Chicago. He was going from Iran all the way here. Back then, things were obviously a little easier. Travel out to, California, Illinois, and he would perform at these events. And also, he was still performing in Iran. And in Iran, at the time, he was singing for the Iranian radio. A lot of people don't know this, and I have to kind of get the full story from my uncle once again, and my mom, because I've heard this from my dad, but there was something happening where something was going to happen for him that was going to create he was going to get really deeper into music, but then the revolution started. So ultimately, I think at the time, the intent wasn't really, oh, we got to leave Iran, but because of the revolution, and because also he was getting a lot more shows, out this way in America, they said, okay, listen, that's like two things. We got to get out of here. So they ended up leaving the country late 1979, I want to say, right when the revolution started. They left Iran. They actually were thinking of going to Australia. That didn't happen. They went to Chicago. They were actually, to all the Chicago listeners, my dad was thinking about just staying in Chicago, but that didn't happen, so they moved out to California. I was born in San Jose. We lived in San Jose until 1986 and moved out to Modesto. But that's pretty much how it was.
When I lived in California, sometimes I would see them together at church. They just seemed very sweet together. And
Yeah.
it's nice to hear that their marriage was built on basically a childhood friendship, which is so beautiful.
It is because back then, especially, it's not like today. There was no dating apps. There was no nothing. So it's really like it was built off of like, forever and ever. I mean, till death do us part. It's not easy being married to a singer or a musician who's always out. I mean, it's not easy. So as much as I've always thought, man, my dad living that rock star life every week, the guy's never home. He's just partying it up. But I think it's easy to think that, oh, well, he's having fun. He's singing. He's doing his thing. Not to say that it wasn't necessarily easy for him. Obviously, he's doing something he loves, but there was always that disconnect from the family that he was always yearning for. And I think my mom had it was hard for her. But, we were there. We were at home. So it was like, okay, I got my son and daughter here. But obviously, when you're away from like your husband or your spouse, for months, I mean, he would go to Australia and stay there for like 2 months because he would only go to Australia once a year. And when he was there, they were just booking him back to back to back to back. And he would fulfill like a 2-month contract there. And he did this for over 30 plus years.
I was going to ask you what role you think your mom played in your dad's career, since he essentially started singing maybe a little bit before they were married, but like soon after it was a full-time gig until the very end. I think it takes a special kind of person to be able to like stand by and like support that. But like, what role do you think she played in his career?
The biggest role. And if you were to ask him, I swear he would say the biggest role. He owed everything to my mom, every single thing. She was the source of inspiration for so many songs. She actually even wrote one of the songs, believe it or not. I told this story in Chicago once.
Uh-huh.
They did this like legacy event for my dad back
Uh-huh.
March of last year. And so, everyone will always ask, okay, we know, G. Vergis wrote all the lyrics. Did Evin write all his songs? We've always heard Evin wrote all his songs. And it's like, yeah, he did. So my dad had covered about, I'd say out of 500 songs, I would really honestly tell you about 12 of them, 13 of them, he didn't write himself. They were covers. So I would say 4 of them, including like Shomiram, it's a cover. And there's 3-4 other songs that they were covered. Like Shimach is originally it's a Greek song. Sara is a Turkish folk song. So, there's certain songs that he's even credited, like this is a cover. But the rest, he wrote himself. I wrote him 3 songs. My sister wrote, famously, Len Miro and Chochve. She wrote those melodies for the vocals to those lyrics. I even said, believe it or not, my mom wrote one song. And when I said this, everyone was like, what's the song? What's the song? I was like, oh my God, okay. Zona. The name is Zona, and it is Chmet Tanach Choboinoch Leila Basa.
Oh, I love that song.
And I remember when I first heard the story, I was like, I told my dad, I said, are you being serious? I'm like, midget mad, like, mama. He's like, yes. I'm like, oh my God. My dad will always credit my mom for giving him the strength, for giving him that perseverance, for really raising 2 kids, when my dad wasn't home, for keeping the house in order. And I'm not talking about cleanliness. I'm just talking about like in order, making sure we are behaving, we're good. And like, it's not easy. I have 2 kids of my own. I think the biggest component to anyone, really anyone, but I will just talk on artistry and artists. When you're not home or when you want to create, you have to be emotionally, mentally there. You have to be locked into your creation, because if you're not, it's just not going to work. And my dad, we all, it was like a team effort. It's like, okay, dad's not home. We want to make sure he's okay. Like, I don't want to do something that's going to make him feel a certain way. My mom, same thing, my sister. So my mom was, the mom, the dad, the friend, everything you can imagine. My mom filled all those blanks in, along with my uncles too. But my mom, being in that house all the time, she made sure everything was good and comfortable, so that when my dad was stepping foot on stage, he felt comfortable and he was able to really give to our extended family, our brothers and sisters all over the world that he would go to, the performance of a lifetime every night, back to back, So he would have always said that my mom was his driving force. Now at like 45, I look back at that and I'm like, for sure, we could credit the beautiful melodies my dad created. We could say the lyrics. But I swear to you, Rhoda, none of those would matter. And I don't think any of that would be possible if it was not for my mom's dedication to just, push him and just kind of be there for him. And there was times that things were rough. It's not always hunky-dory. You know what I mean? There was times that, I won't get into the weeds with this, because there was times where I'm sure you've heard of some stories from a lot of different artists where they go and it's like, sorry, can't pay you tonight. It's like, huh? Wait, what happened? And it's like, yeah, sorry. It's like, oh, okay. What are you going to do? You're going to sue the promoter? You're not going to believe me, I think we can all agree, if it was anyone else, outside of our culture, they're like, I'm going to go sue him. Like, there's no way you're going to do it. But you're not going to sue. You're not going to do any of that. It'd be different, let's say, if you're single. It's like, okay, wow, this guy stiffed me for my payment. Fine. But now I have mouths to feed. I have 2 kids. I have a wife. I have a mortgage. So when you have a wife behind you that's like, don't worry. We're going to get through it. It's okay. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. She gave him that inspiration. She gave him that motivation. And I mean, one more, I could literally spend a few hours on the podcast just giving you so many different stories and insights to how she helped. But yeah, she was definitely a driving force.
Something that comes to my mind is there's this great duet with Rumsen Shinu and Thalal Girish, and it's like one of my favorite Assyrian duets. There's a line where they're talking about essentially they're friends, and they're talking about a girl who might be interested in one of the singers, and she doesn't like that he's like always gone singing. Like that's kind of what you infer. But
Right.
the line is Salman Dunyat La Umane. So if like imagine a world where artists didn't exist
Right.
because they weren't going around and performing and making music and being gone. What a world that would be. And I feel like it's like the first time, or maybe one of the first times we hear Assyrian artists sort of being a little meta and reflecting on their experience as
That's
artists.
right. Yeah.
Because I do think Assyrian artists are different in terms of when you compare them to musicians in the States, or like musicians that are working with these production companies, and they have like these big sponsors and they have agencies supporting them and all of these.
Oh, yeah.
Assyrian artists don't have that. So that's sort of like the business side of the work that you're sort of
Sure.
alluding to, that isn't as easy for our singers. I think, I've spoken to lots of different Assyrian singers, and obviously what drives them is always their passion for their music and their people, and that's what keeps them going. But at the end of the day, it also has to pay the bills, and it has to provide for their families when they have families in order to
Right.
make it something worthwhile. So the fact that your dad was able to do this his whole life basically just speaks to the amount of love people had for him, that they just wanted him back over and over again all these years, and how much care he took in crafting his music in a way that would make him relevant as he was, if not even more than when he first started.
You touched on something beautifully, and that's the fact that, kind of like our infrastructure for music is not what other ethnicities have. I learned how important our music was through my dad. I learned the importance of the music when I started playing drums for him. And I will say this, and I want if we have any singers, if we have any musicians, if we have any artists listening to this podcast, listen to what I'm about to say, because I think it will hit home for all of us. Growing up, obviously you're listening to music and you don't know the difference. You're just listening to a song. You're listening. For me, I've always said, Khazade, favorite song. Not just of my dad's, not just of all music. Like, even if someone comes up to me and says, hey, what's one of your favorite songs? I'll say, Khazade by Evin Agassi. That's it. I mean, to me, I don't look at Assyrian music as, oh, it's Assyrian music. No. It's music. It's music, and it has its own category. It has its own language. We as artists, we as, singers, we cannot afford not to continuously grow and learn and develop our music. We do not have the infrastructure that I'll pick on the American side of music. They have record labels. They have downside guarantees. They have merchandising. They have, brand recognition that, I mean, at some point, someone's going to go record an album, have big popularity online, have enough people to support them, and then they just build that brand. I mean, we see it all the time. We don't have that. So we need to continuously build our music. And when I say build our music, I'm not just saying keep doing the same thing. Let's keep going. No. I really, from my hope as an artist, as a creative, I want to hear variety. I want our musicians, our singers, not to be afraid to carve their own lane, because I do think that's what has happened. And what ends up happening is the younger generation, listen, the younger generation's in a melting pot. This isn't the time of like 1980 where, you know, your mom and dad are like, hey, we need to remember that our music cannot afford to be toyed with, because it's the only thing that we have that is in our language and will continuously bring people in. When you have events, you have music. When you have convention, you got music. When you have wedding, you have music. But the music will grow the community. And the only way you can grow and bring these young people in, because the young people today, they don't just have MTV and VH1 or BET. They have Spotify with 3,000 different playlists. They have YouTube Music. They have iTunes. They have all sorts of different technological functionalities that they can go into and dive and listen to various different musics from all over the world. But when they come to Assyrian music, they have to feel something. And it shouldn't just be, I'm not saying it shouldn't just be the Zorna Davuda or dance. We need to start bringing in some of the things like Ashur did, Linda did, Evin did, Sargon did, Shamiran did, you know, Jarman Temres did, Fatin Shabu. I mean, the list can go on. But what happens is these singers will all have a period where they say, okay, I'm done. Now, ultimately, what happened with my father? He passed away, unfortunately. Shamiran Urshan, Ala Manachla, she passed away. But what happens is the music lives on. And we don't necessarily have to stop making amazing music. We got to continuously make great music, but don't just make good music for right now. Don't just do it for the short term. Don't just do it to get a big pop out of someone. Make music that resonates with your soul. Listen to various different music, because the youngsters are listening to music from all over the world. And when they come and listen to Assyrian music, make sure they hear something that's not quote unquote Assyrian. They need to feel as though they have a connection, because they're growing up in a society where music, it's a lot deeper than anyone really thinks. And we could continue saying, oh, well, you know, it's just, no, it's not. We're going to lose a lot of young generation just thinking that way. Because yes, Zorna Davuda is great. I love to dance, but I also want to listen. I don't just want to say, oh, Assyrian music's just good for dance. No, it is. It's great for dance, but so is Arabic music, so is Persian music, so is, like, you know, Chinese music, whatever it is. But every ethnicity has its own beauty. We could keep that, but we have to focus on the young people, because right now, you know, that's the one thing that we can hold forever and keep forever for us. And if artists just aren't afraid to create their own lane and stay in it, I promise you, when they start developing and identifying who they are as a musician and as an artist, and not be afraid to come out of their shell, I really, really believe you're going to see some magic happen in the Assyrian community. That's the biggest thing. You know, when you were talking about, you know, we don't have, you know, the record labels and this and that, that just makes what I said a lot deeper and a lot more meaningful, because we don't have any of those. If we had those, oh my God, then you could sing whatever you want. You could start cursing in your music too. I mean, for God's sakes, really, because then it just goes to a certain point of like entertainment standpoint, you know? And what I alluded to earlier of how I learned how important my dad's music was to our people. When I was growing up, I was listening to it as music. But when I started playing for him, in my first gig with him full time was the New Year's party for 1996. And from that point all the way to my last show with him at his 55th anniversary party for his singing career in Chicago on November 11th, 2023, which was his 54th anniversary with my mom. And it's on YouTube. You guys can go watch it. He surprised my mom with balloons and a ring and all that stuff. That was my last show with him. And from 96 to 2023, I sat behind this man, and I swear to you, not one party, not even a wedding, where people were not gathered around the stage with their cell phones, recording, line wrapped from the entrance to the stage. People just wanted to take a photo. And that's when I was like, wow, Chazada isn't just a song. It's a revolutionary type of song. It's an anthem. Why is this guy asking for Chazada in his wedding? Wow. But that, when I sat back, because, when my dad was home, he was dad. But when I was with him and we were out in, an event, I started looking at him as a different person. I wasn't just his son. I was like, wow, I'm observing and I'm soaking this in. So that's why I say our music is so important to us, because, and I can only speak for my dad, but his music connected the Assyrians in America, in Europe, and in the Middle East. Because I was born here. I was born in San Jose. I didn't know the struggles of what was happening in Iraq. I learned what was happening. I learned through his songs and through other singer songs, but I learned through his songs. And I learned the importance when he went to Syria and they raised this car. I was like, why? And then you learn, oh, wow. That's when you start putting two and two together and you're like, wow, he's not just a singer. He wasn't just a singer. He was everything. And when he passed away, man, I I realized how many brothers and sisters I had in the world. I'm not just talking here in the Southern California. No. The messages from Iraq, from Syria, from Iran, from Europe, from Australia, from Canada, from all, I just was like, wow, your music not only connected all the Syrians and taught them about, a lot of the struggles and taught them love and all this stuff, but your music connected all of us. Like, I'm now grieving, and I don't have to grieve alone. I'm having, this person from Syria literally send me pictures every day of, lighting candles and saying prayers. It's like, whew, wow. And and I can't even begin to tell you what an honor it is. It's so humbling. It's so beautiful. I'm so blessed and fortunate to have that connection with our people because of his music. I don't know how I can even put it into words. So
It's almost like through his songs, he gave voice to so many people's struggles and journeys and grief and pain, but also journeys in love in ways that we maybe wouldn't be able to voice ourselves. And so now we are all connected because of that music and that gift of storytelling, and that's such a beautiful thing. And it's so beautiful for you to have experienced that, that the grief that you had losing your dad was shared across the world by Assyrians all over the world. I think it was obviously, like, we know he was in the middle of doing a concert and like that didn't happen,
yeah,
and people were legitimately grieving his loss. And I think that just speaks to the fact that he wasn't just a musician. He really was a cultural
yeah.
icon in so many different ways.
Thank you. It's true. It really is.
The last time you and I spoke, I expressed to you grateful I am that all of your dad's music is
Yeah.
available on iTunes, and like how easily accessible it is and how we could just listen to
Mhm.
it, make our own playlists, add it to our library. Tell me about that process of both like making sure your dad's music is accessible and available to people who are constantly listening to music on their phones, but also, like, I know you worked with him to, did you re-record or remaster his old records? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this process was very man, it was very long. Some singers will have like 5 albums to their name. No, my dad had to go and have like 50 albums and like singles. And I'm like, my God, I'm still finding material. Like, stop, like, so the whole thing came up. I mean, I don't remember the year when iTunes came out, but this was like back in 07, 08, somewhere at that point, maybe 09. When more and more music was, just becoming available, there was no more, LimeWire was almost a thing of the past. Now people are now buying like songs, downloading for like, 99 cents and this and that. iTunes first started coming out. It wasn't really readily available to non-major record label artists, meaning, the Drakes of the world, the Michael Jacksons of the world. And I would say a few years in, things started softening up because you had third-party distributors to say, hey, if you're, a record label, but you don't have 5 million, whatever, we could put it on. It just goes through like a middleman. Not a big deal. So when that came up, I remember telling my dad, I said, hey, because at the time, he was thinking about doing like a CD, or not a CD, but like 4 CDs. It was going to be EVIN. E was going to be the greatest hits from like 1970 through 1981. V was going to be like 82 to 87. I was going to be like 88 through like 95, 96. And then N was going to be the rest. So when that came up, I was like, yeah, we may want to rethink this because people aren't really buying CDs anymore. And I remember him saying, no, we need to do it. And so obviously we never did that, but we started talking about digitizing. And when you talk about digitizing, I mean, back in the day when my dad was originally recording like Khazade or Urmi, Habani, all those albums, they were recorded on something called reels. Reels are like really big 2-inch like tapes, film, okay? And those films contained magically, and it is such beauty to them, they contained 16 to like 24 or 32 different tracks of audio. So channel 1 would be one microphone, channel 2 would be the second microphone, so on and so forth, okay? Now, back then, I would say back like in the mid-2000s when we first started talking about this, you got to remember, if I will send you a picture, Rhoda, at some point, I will show you all the reels he has. I want to say it's probably in the ballpark of like 100-something. 100-something. I would say videotapes he has probably in the area of like hundreds. And they all contain parties. So any listeners listening, yeah, your guys going to get a lot of YouTube content. So, but those audio tracks, they were on reels. Now to convert those reels to what we have right now and how we're recording digitally into a computer and sending it through email, those reels had to be transferred. And not a lot of studios have those machines anymore. So in the mid-2000s or so, there's one of my buddies out here, Mario, who has a studio around here in Lake Forest. He actually started converting some of them. And it takes a lot of time because you have to bake those tapes. Like literally bake them. Put them in an oven, a special oven, and they bake them. They warm them up. Because that film can get stuck to one another. Sometimes some of those tracks can bleed into one another. So like channels 1 and 2, you might get like a little effect of like channel 1 and 2 is mixed into one another. Sometimes there's a lot of deterioration made to those tapes. So we started doing it. And like one reel contained literally 5 songs out of 10. Then we're like, okay, well, wait, where are the other songs? Okay, well, we got to go with this one. Oh, it's not in this one. Oh, it's in this one. No, it's not in this one. This one says blank, but I played it, and it's a song from like 1985. It's like, oh my God. How did you guys label this stuff? Because, listen, back then, they had no clue what was going to come up like 30, 40 years later, you know? So they're probably just thinking like in 1980, like, I mean, this is the standard process for recording. What is MP3? What's digital? Like, no one had any clue of those things. So they were literally taking all those boxes of the tapes that contained, again, what should have been an album. They were just scratching off, writing another name, scratching that off. And yeah, so Bryner and Evin and Givergis spent, I would say, probably a good 6 to 7 years going through reels, getting them converted, paying for all of them, getting them converted, listening, sometimes getting the same tape converted about 3 different times. Just like I'm knocking them, I knock myself because I didn't label it, done. So then finally my dad just started taking Post-its and just, okay, done. All those years later, we come up to the year 2021, the end of 2021. I'm like, okay, we're good. Especially during COVID when everything was like shut down. It was like, okay, this is like, we got to do this. Like, this is a good opportunity where there's nothing, the world's shut down. So I don't know what to tell you, but we got to start working on this. We started listening to the songs. And what I like to say is categorizing them. So I would literally take his cassette tape, I would record it into my studio computer. I would record it so that I can hear what the original cassette sounded like. What, let's say, your parents probably heard, what my parents heard, what, everyone heard and knew. And of course, it's a lot more warmer because it's all, it's analog. There's certain originality to it. So when I went to like redo things, I didn't want to stray away from the originality at all. So I recorded all of those albums into the computer. And then I started categorizing them. So I would look literally through all these different songs. I'm like, okay, so let's go with not the Shomiran album. Let's go with, let's say, the Habanya album. Okay, there's Telja, there's Zona, there's Habanya, there's Lelavatit Ninve. I'm like, oh, wait, we're missing this song. And then you're looking through it. You're like, oh, it's not here. And then you go to the album of Khazade, and it's there. I'm like, what is it doing here? He's like, I swear his response was like, I don't know. I don't think we knew what we were doing back then. I said, oh, my God. Okay, so call back Mario. Mario, I need you to bake another tape for me. Sure, bring it on in. After we categorized everything, I would say in 2022, a lot of work and outside interferences came in to where, we kind of halted the process. And then we picked it back up in 2023 because one thing that was really important for me was I wanted to make sure my dad was here, because I have always stated I did not press send or finalize without the green light from him, because I tell you, there was a lot of times where he would tell me, no, just do what you want. And then I did what I want. And then he'd say, no, I need you to do this. I knew it. And I told him, and I remember there was a couple of times I said, I'm one step ahead of you because I did not put this through. He's like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. No. Go back and put this on. I was like, all right, cool. So the process when we talked about like remastering and remixing them, one, we did not re-record anything. There was nothing re-recorded.
Okay.
So I'll take a song like Habanya, which is one of my favorite songs. So I played Habanya, and I still have my own notes that I have on just piece of paper. I would put, okay, song number 1, Habanya. I made notes for myself. Keep piano intro sounds like it's at volume, for example, 7. When the music kicks in, I feel like it drops a little bit. Then my dad's voice comes in. There's a little bit more reverb than not. Oh, there's no delay here. There's that. I took so much thorough notes just to be able to capture the emotions and capture the sound sonically, be able to capture that sonic sound that you hear, put it on paper so that if I come revisit it next week, I go back and I know how I need to remix things. And this is what I'm talking about, the remixing process. So when I listen to the cassette tape, everything's there, right? This is how our parents heard it. This is how you've heard it. This is how I've heard it my whole life. When I open it up in my computer, remember how I was saying some of those cassettes or those tapes had, 16 channels, 16 microphones, 20. Okay. Well, now I'm staring at 16 different microphones. Each of them have something different. Channel 1 is Evin's voice. Channel 2 is like one microphone of the drums. Channel 3 is another microphone out of like the 6 microphones they used for the drums. Channel 8 is one of the piano microphones. Channel 9 is another microphone for the piano that was like placed behind the piano player. Then you have like the bass. Then you have a guitar. Like it just continues going. And this is the tricky part. Because you would think that, okay, well, you just put everything up to like 0. You just put everything, there and everything should work. It's not like that. The vocals have to be at a certain, number. Let's say we placed them at 0. But then I learned that, there's no compressor. Or this song has compressor on its voice. So I don't have to really worry about the compressor. What the compressor does, it keeps your vocals compressed in a certain, I don't want to say box, but it doesn't allow them to like shock the ear if like he starts hitting high notes or whatnot. It just kind of keeps it very leveled. And so what I've realized is that a lot of times, a lot of those mixes, they took a lot of time, and I had to do the same thing. And now I have the notes. That's where I looked at the notes. I said, okay, the reverb dipped. As soon as they hit that very end note at the beginning of Habanya, where he's singing like, right at the very last one, that note drops. But it's not dropping. So they lowered the volume on the last note.
Musular berkhizeli matvat aturaye kullel bali جمالي موصلار بالخزيالي جمانت خوما كركوت هل قشت عرت خيرالي خشما متباتي بلي خشما دنيا تخلي كرماني ججل جديلي طنطة خرمي غنديلي فلاخي كل جميري إيدي القز الأغديري بيدات مجنوميرا القصة طولاتي
I had to go through and do all that.
How long would you say you spent on each song?
Oh, God. Varies. There's some songs that are really easy. Like there was not much science to them because there wasn't that many instruments. Like the album of like Deridishtit Marduta with like Zamara, Preshta, Urmi. If you listen to that, there was only 4 musicians. There was not a lot. And that is one of those albums that I always reference to. You don't need a lot of musicians. You just need really good ones. And the feel and the melodies, that's magic. Right there, that's magic. So those didn't take long because there wasn't a lot of science to them. There wasn't a lot of notes. It was just you got to make sure everything's lined up. and you listen to a lot of like the events that were happening sonically and making sure they match, making sure the reverb and the delay that was used in the voice, I mimicked the same type of reverb and delay that was used back in the early 80s, more so the same that was used on my dad's voice. So I would say there was some songs that honestly took me about 4, 5, 6 hours, 8 hours to mix. There was some songs that literally took me about a week.
But I think it also makes sense that we don't have a lot of Assyrian music on iTunes from back in the day, because you happen to be skilled in this area and worked with your dad to do this. Some of our other artists who don't have someone to do this for them, unfortunately, we don't have their music available digitally. It's unfortunate because I think that in some ways I see we talked earlier about like making music for the younger generation. And I do think that there is a little bit of like a revival maybe in the younger Assyrian generation who are starting to care about Assyrian music and dancing and all of that in a way that I don't feel was as palpable when I was their age. And I think it's beautiful. And so giving them access to music that meant something and was so different, that was made in the 80s, would be fantastic. So the fact that we all have access to your dad's music is really amazing. And I just want to commend you for doing this, because it doesn't sound like it was easy at all. And it sounds like it took a really long time to do, but I think well worth it for what it gives to the Assyrian community around the world. Bryner, I didn't ask you this, but did you go to school for music?
I didn't go to school for music. You know, one thing was about music in general. My dad would always tell me, do music, learn it, but I don't want you to pursue it as a career. It took me and I'm talking a very long time to kind of get over that and fully understand what he meant. He would always tell me, I want you to pursue music, because when he was growing up, and he didn't grow up in America, he grew up in Iran. So he saw the musicians, he saw the other singers. My dad, knock on wood, from the very first day he picked up the mic, it's like as if he just made it. Like it was like, okay, let's put you on the radio. Oh, we got a new single. Let's go. It was like the Michael Jackson effect. If I had to compare him, because Michael Jackson never really had to work a day in his life. My dad never really worked a day in his life. Like it happened. Now, is it right time, right place? Sure. Is it, the ability? Sure. But everything lined up. And so, it's a blessing from God. He did it. But with that, he also saw a lot of his friends that struggled. And he knew that, okay, well, we're in America. My son really likes rock music. It's a different ballgame, because in Iran, we didn't have that many musicians. We didn't have that many singers. People were struggling. Some weren't. But the probability, if you have talent to make it, was good. In America, here, the population's like billions, and you're just one of the millions who wants to pursue this. So he always looked at it like, I don't want my son to struggle. I don't want you to struggle. They always said, go to school, get an education. So I did. I got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and I got them in business. But the whole time, I'm like on the sidelines doing music. I'm learning. I'm playing with different bands. Like, I'm doing this, right? And obviously my dad said, look, I want you, when I was like 8 years old at convention in Turlock, he got me up at 8 years old to play Chazade. And I played it. And I remember that was when it was like, oh my God, I love music. I love the drums. Like, oh my God, But he noticed that. And I think that's where he came into it. Like, hey, Bruni, as you get older, I'll tell you more about the industry and the struggles, but I don't want you to struggle. So please continue to do good at school. Continue to go. Don't lose sight of it. So as the years went on, again, 16 years old, I became his full-time drummer when he was in California and, surrounding states, because obviously I wasn't going to be able to travel with him. As the years went on and as I got older, became an adult, he taught me a little bit more. He said, the most successful musician is the musician who will have money in his pocket. And I was like, well, yeah, but I got to work towards it. And I remember he told me, he's like, no. I don't want you to focus on making money with music. He's like, because let me tell you why. He's like, don't look at me. Don't look at your father. Okay. He's like, Anna, God put me here. God placed me here. Vila. I don't know why, but it happened for me. Okay. He's like, but and he said, but right now, because, the industry is obviously different. We're not, it's not like you're wanting to go play with, if you want to go play with Assyrian singers, go play. and mind you, I started getting a lot of requests from Assyrian singers to go play drums with them. I didn't take them up on any because I knew that the way I played, what I wanted to provide was a lot different. And I knew it only worked with like my dad's because it was like a live band setting. We had a bass player, this and that. So I didn't just want to go up there just to say I'm playing, because I was very fixated on, hey, this is my style. This is the way I play. Does it fit with you? It won't. You just want me to come play just to say, oh, I have a drummer on stage. But hey, there's a lot of other drummers. Go get someone else, because if I play too fast or if I start doing some like impromptu like rock stuff, you might not like it. You know what I mean? Whereas my dad was like, hey, bring it. Do it, because that's what it's all about. You got to show off your style, who you are as a musician. So when my dad said the most successful musician is the one that has money in his pocket, he wasn't talking about a successful musician or a successful singer who has money in his pocket making money from shows. What he said, and as he was elaborating towards me, he said, when you work and you become successful, you'll have money in your pocket. You will then choose who you want to perform with. You will be in control of the music you want to create, when you want to create it. He's like, haven't you seen me? And he even said, he's like, haven't you seen sometimes when I came home and I was trying to work on music and I was like, så delicate you. He's like, sometimes I just had to make music, and sometimes I would make music and I didn't even like it. And I said, I'm not going to put this out because I just didn't like it for whatever, whatever he was going through. Right. So he always taught me, he said, get your education, work, make your money, be successful. And I'm not saying, go make money, make money enough to say I could put food on the table. And then I will make the music I love to make, or I will perform with the singers and musicians I want to perform with. Because he's like, haven't you noticed some of the musicians you've seen firsthand? They will go and pick every single opportunity they have. They will undercut the next person. They will say, no, don't bring him, bring me. Why? Because they're undercutting. They're asking for 500, but they're coming and saying, no, bring me. I'll just do it for 200. Why? Because they need the gig. They need to put, some money in their own pocket. He's like, are they actually playing what they want to play? I said, no. He's like, which one do you want? I said, I want to play the music I want to play. He's like, there you go. So that really resonated a lot with me. And that's when I started realizing, oh, this is why he wanted me to go to school. My schooling was business, was not music, but I have a gift from God, and I've put in a lot of hours, and that's just, I'm self-taught, but I did have a drum teacher by the name of Robert Nokli. He's one of my dearest friends. I talk to him all the time. I started studying with him when I was about 11, 12. Yeah, my dad would drive me up from Modesto all the way to LA just to take a 2-hour class with him. We'd stay at my cousin's and we'd go back. We'd come back the next month.
This has been, an ongoing theme on the podcast when we've interviewed different artists, just talking about their parents not really wanting them to pursue art. And like, I think at some point, everyone comes to the realization that the reason their parents push them to do something else is because ultimately they don't want them to struggle and they want to see them be successful, because at the end of the day, our parents sacrificed so much for us to have the life that we have, and they don't want us to choose something that puts us back into a life of struggle. But to me, what's interesting from what you've shared is that although your dad was very keen on you continuing your education and getting your education and having a career outside of music, he also was very supportive. Not only just driving you to LA, which is like a 4.5 hour, 5 hour drive every month for you to learn how to play the drum, but also just in bringing you on stage with him or agreeing to work with you, on the production of his music and all of that. So that's wonderful. I know that your dad had some unfinished projects before he passed. What are your plans for sort of continuing his legacy? I think the music itself will live on, and that being available to all of us is wonderful. But I know you've said before there are some plans for other things that you want to do. Is there anything you can share with us?
There's no like unreleased music, but there is an a unreleased album that was really just a compilation of singles back in the 70s. Still working on that. He has singles that were sang in Persian and Farsi that still need to come out. And some singles that, again, they were the, like Ayva to Atre, those singles that are all on that one album that he has. It's a compilation that's called like 1958 or something, 1959 compilation. But those were also singles that need to come out. And I just want to do right by the authenticity of what he had physically put out. And I just want to make sure those are put out as singles as well. There is one thing that has not come out, and there's one thing that people have probably seen on my social media a lot since his passing, which was this magical number of 55. And, when I first put that out, people were like, wait, 55, what is it? Well, what are you telling us? So 55 obviously is the years that he sang professionally. 65 years are the years that he sang. 65 years he sang. 55 were professional, meaning, touring, getting paid, like all of that, like the professional, When after his show in Chicago, the 55-year performance, after that performance there, he came back to LA January of 2024. We had a photo shoot, and man, that photo shoot, I'll never forget it, because a lot of those pictures were ultimately used for when he passed, just literally 9 months later. But when he came, I remember telling him, I said, after the show in Chicago, I remember telling him, I said, all these people, all this love, all these years in our community. Remember, we don't have like a merchandising community, like get your t-shirt, from the Chicago part. Like, you see that a lot, like in, concerts and even like wrestling, it's like they all have merchandise. I told my dad, I said, listen, you got to have one thing. And I'm not talking about I've seen people make like keychains and stuff like that. I'm not talking that. I'm saying have something, a collectible. Have something that literally I can pass down to my kids. He was like what? What can we possibly do? Nashidian, like, what would they want? And I said, your lyrics, the story, like your songs are so powerful. They have provided hope. They continue providing hope. Like, it's not like we have our own country. It's not like nothing has changed. We're still struggling. Our people are still in need. And they're in need of hope. They're in need of all this stuff. I said, because, look, what are you going to do? Like, send out, like, autographed pictures? Like, no, just, you got to have something really, really special. So he said, okay, let's make a book called 55. This year is going to be 56. The following year is going to be 57. But I said, 56, 57, such an odd year. Like, it's not like like a 55 year. I said, you can wait till the 60th year, but 60, it's not a very commemorative year as like a 55 is. And I said, just stylistically, 55 is very cool, He's like, yeah, but what do you want to write? Like, about my life? I said, no. Choose 55 songs that have meant not only the most to you, but to our people. Take those songs and let's finally tell the story of what Chazada is. What is Chazada? What is this? How did you come up with it? And then let's take the lyrics written in Assyrian. Let's put them on there. But let's go a step further. Let's also transliterate them, phonetically spell them out in English. Not only that, but let's put the interpretation, literal translation to English at the bottom. And if that's not enough, how about we scan the original handwritten lyrics of Givergis and put them on that page? Oh man, and I remember during that photo shoot, I even had my uncle take photos with him. I don't know, man. Something in that photo shoot, it was something told me something special was about to, like, I'm capturing something special here. I don't know what it is. I will say, I don't know. It's not like I'm a morbid person, but something just told me, like, Bryner, you just never know. Capture both of them. Get both of them. Capture both. And those pictures no one's seen. I'm telling you, I've taken hundreds of photos that day. Some of them, they haven't been seen. The ones with my uncle, my dad haven't been seen. And I wanted to use those specifically for the book. When we took those photos, when we sat down and started thinking about the book, my dad was like, okay, I got 500 songs and I love all of them. But so which ones? I said, well, listen, it's going to be easy because you're not going to put like Malichta or Telja because those are, they're the jams, man. Those are the songs you sing all the time. But like, how about like Mubit Hoyava Plasha Laviva or Nature or Talta or, Mayanich Tave. Or, it's like Sitfachma Majdilana. Or how about like Chazade? And how about Sapad? And how about these? He's like, okay, do me a favor. Work with your uncle. Because it's hard for me to say this one, because people all have memories from him. He's like, you have to talk to your uncle and have him kind of figure out which ones. Because, again, he would always say, that's my teacher. He is the one who will know. He is the one. So I sat down with my uncle and I remember just telling him, I said, okay, which ones do you want to go with? And of course, my dad gets the final say on things, So we picked 55 songs. And we've just started working on those. Of course, I would say, 6-7 months after this idea came up, we had to put it to a stop because, my dad got sick. 2 months after that, he passed, and it was like, oh boy. I mean, I was crippled, and I had these songs that I still had to like put out. So I was more focused on the albums that had to be put out, working on those, because I knew that's something that I could quickly turn around. The book, we had just started working on it, and again, collecting all the artifact stuff, like his lyrics. I'm looking at some of the original paperwork right now that he wrote, and it's like, man, this is a karate magazine from like 1982. Wow. He literally ripped it off, and I'm going to take a photo of it and send it to you. Literally, it's a page, because my Uncle G. Vergis, little known fact, he studied karate, he studied yoga, and you know, he was just all about that. He's all about that life, man. So he had like karate books and magazines, and he ripped that front literally cover of the book, and he wrote inside the cover lyrics. And I'm like, back in the karate book, and I'm like, wow, you and mind you, I used to spend every Friday and Saturday sometimes at my uncle's place when I was growing up. And just because I loved my Uncle G. Vergis, I mean, he is my best. He's really one of my best friends, and he's like a father figure to me. So I would go there every Friday and Saturday. My grandma would make me burgers and fries, or, you know, whatever she was making at the day, like dolma and rosa. And I remember literally in the middle of the night, all I hear is this guy waking up, looking for a napkin, starts writing down ideas. I'm thinking to myself, like, did you just like wake up in the middle of the night? Like, look, because he still does it. He would pick me up from school, driving home. He's writing on a piece of like napkin, spilling coffee. I'm like, Jesus, watch out. Like, you're driving. Like, what are you? So yeah, he is still that guy. Like, if you meet him, he is still that guy. He'll just randomly start writing stuff down, and it's like, oh, he's coming up with an idea. So that is the book. That is 55.
How deep into the project are you all? Do you have like an estimated completion date? How is that going?
We had this gathering in Canada we were supposed to do, and actually I suggested we cancel it because the book was just nowhere near ready. I never knew writing a book was going to be this hard. The whole stories, like I told you about, like the music and like the channels, like, you know, you hear, that is nothing. I'm telling you right now, nothing compared to writing a book, because it is so difficult. And I will say, we actually have a ghostwriter who's helping us write the story. And one thing I've learned from my dad is that sometimes when you have the idea, it's good to kind of throw it to someone else, so it's not just you, and because it just becomes that idea. And sometimes you just got to let someone else take the ball with it, because they'll give a special twist to it that, you know, obviously in this case, I'm not a book writer. I'm not a book designer. I'm a musician. I could produce music for you, but I'm not a book writer. So I knew that I needed to remove all preconceived notions, biases, you got to remove all that. Because when you're writing a book, you have to be very, very factual and very, very precise on certain things. So when I sat down with my dad and my uncle, and again, my dad didn't have a lot of input on the story because it all comes from my uncle. So let's just take a song like Hakkari. When you sit down and listen to the song, you might actually not even Hakkari. Let's go with Ders. It's about a cat and mouse. It's about a homeowner who had a mouse. And in the song, my dad is actually, it's like, you know, it's almost like a kid song. It's literally, it sounds like a childhood, like, you know, fairy tale music coming to life. And he's talking to the kids. He's like, and he's going through the story of how this husband and wife had a mouse in the house. They brought a cat, but the cat couldn't get the mouse. They actually started working together and they wreaked havoc. So they went out and they got a dog to scare the mouse, But what happened is all three of them worked, and every guest that would come to the house, the dog would attack. They almost ran us out of our house. So you know what? Now that we look back at it, that little mouse, we looked at him as a big bear, as a big wolf. He was only a mouse. We shouldn't have been scared of that. So now, if you think that's just a song about a cat and mouse and a dog, oh, it's one of the deepest political, controversial songs. And people have theories of who the dog and the mouse and the cat are. And to this date, no one's ever said. And my uncle actually got asked about this in Arizona when we were there just a few months ago for this event for my dad. And he said, you have to decide who they are.
Yeah, and it's also in print and in people's
Yeah.
hands, and you can't take it
No, you
back.
cannot.
Yeah. Well, that's really awesome. As someone who deeply values books and just poetry in
Oh, wow.
general, for one, I'm very excited to read this when it does come
That's
out.
awesome.
I'm gonna take this part out,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna send you something because I started this project a few months ago because I had this idea that like Assyrian music can connect to music
Sure.
worldwide and like other kind of genres of music. And this idea that I would find an Assyrian song and a song that was not an Assyrian and write about how the two of them connect.
Beautiful.
And so so I started a Substack, and the first one I did was Khabade and Bella
Oh,
Ciao.
wow.
I'll send you a link to it. I'd be curious
Please do.
to hear your thoughts. But like the other one is like Changes by Tupac and Nina's David's Batul Tewat Ya
Wow.
Dunya. I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
you
yeah,
heard
yeah.
that song. But yeah. So anyway, like all this to say, lyrics mean a whole lot to
Wow.
me. And through that project, I ended up like basically like just for myself, obviously translating a lot of Assyrian
That's
songs.
amazing.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward
Oh,
to
that's
this
so
project of
amazing.
yours.
I can't wait
Yeah.
for you to read it. I think you'll get a real big kick out of it, honestly.
Bryner, you have given us so much of your time, but also just so many stories that I know our listeners will enjoy hearing. We always end every conversation on the Assyrian podcast by asking our guest if there was one thing you could say to all of our listeners, what would it be?
Because it is the Assyrian podcast. And I think we need to always remind ourselves, we have to continuously fight through any preconceived notions, any thoughts, and we have to be united. We have to stay united. We have to look beyond religion. We have to look beyond any sort of affiliation with any other political figures or whatnot. And we have to stay united because our blood runs deep. Our blood is uniting us all. We have to continuously remind ourselves to love one another. We are all brothers and sisters. We have to unite and stay united. If we do not unite, do not expect anyone else to ever help us unite or stay united or ever do anything that we're requesting and been pleading for ever. So it all starts with uniting, and we have to stay united because we also have to be the example for our children and pass that example along. So unite, love your fellow brothers and sister, stand for peace, and don't forget that at the end of the day, we are Aturai. We are all one. And I love each and every single one of you guys. And with that being said, it's such an honor being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything, Bryner. We are looking forward to the book and anything else that you have to come of your dad and carrying his legacy forward.
Thank you, dear. I appreciate that so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked it, please share it with your friends and also follow us on social media for more.
شمتنن چبای ناغله لبسه شمت زمریت زمر ناغله لبسه خبرانی اغمر جنیت خرزنون آق دلغین درنون لبسه جلی چی بطورانین نجرنون جلی ورده خانه این بجرنون این جلی چخ و جشمه جبنون خود اقلا تقدرنون لبسه بسلا قد كلنا شخش بقلاق بسلا ايدك كل فوقلاق قبران تخطان لا مش ميلاق بسلا تخمن ياتي قبللاق فقر مغليلة بسا يقر مغليلة بسا إن كل زونة تانين باين مغليلة بسا شمتنن چبای ناغله لبسه شمت زمریت زمر ناغله لبسه خبرانی اغمر جنیت خرزنون حلق دلقین درنون لبسه جلی چی بطورانین نجرنون جلی ورده خانه این بجرنون این جلی چخ و جشمه جبنون خود اقلا تقدرنون لبسه بسلا قد كلنا شخش بقلاق بسلا ايدك كل خللاق قبران تخطان لا مش ميلاق بسلا تخمن ياتي قبللاق فقرنا الليلة بسا يقرنا الليلة بسا إن كل زونة تانين باينا الليلة بسا فقرنا الليلة بسا يقرنا